If you're using the MQTT protocol to connect your IoT devices to the cloud or to communicate with one another, you will want to check out the Azure Event Grid MQTT Broker. That is a program manager in the Event Grid team and will tell us all we need to know as IoT practitioners about this new feature of Event Grid. Yes, there are existing open source brokers you can just deploy yourself in a VM in the cloud, but you might be surprised how much more you can get by opting for an MQTT broker as a service, such as the one the Event Grid team is offering. That's today on the IoT Show. Hi everyone, this is the IoT Show. I'm Olivier, your host. Thanks for watching. Today we will talk MQTT Broker in Event Grid on Azure, and for that we have Seth. Hey Seth, how are you?
Hey Olivier, nice to see you. Hi, I'm Seth. I'm product manager at Event Grid, managing the MQTT broker engagements worldwide. I manage the entire product portfolio for Azure Event Grid MQTT profiles, and I'm happy to here to talk about our product today. Thank you, Olivier.
Great. Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. Just a quick question I like asking my guests. Where are you calling from?
I'm from Seattle,
Oh,
Washington.
you're local. We're
Yep.
neighbors. Cool. Awesome. Perfect. I like that. Well, like these days, it's important to ask because it could be morning, afternoon, whatever, right? And that's great. That's great. And people watching us certainly are from all over the place as well. So our audience is IoT developers, people building devices, connecting them to the cloud, sometimes, often, right? Extracting insights from all the data and so on. And they know really well about MQTT, which is that protocol allowing initially devices and machines to communicate with one another through a broker. Here we want to talk about how MQTT is integrated into a service called Event Grid. And Event Grid is something that my audience, people watching us right now, might not know about. So how about you give us the pitch, the elevator pitch about Event Grid? What is that?
It's a good question. So, Azure Event Grid is a highly scalable, fully managed pub and sub message distribution service that offers a flexible consumption patterns and protocols like MQTT 3.1, MQTT v5, HTTP push and pull, along with the routing capabilities. When I say routing capabilities, distributing the data that you get from broker to your subscriptions and endpoints. Now, where do we use this today? So today, wherever you have a reactive programming environment, like where the constantly the data has been changing and the system needs to automatically react to those events, that's the place you use Azure Event Grid. And also where you have a scalable environment with a loosely coupled services which don't have to know about each other. I think that's the place where we have to use Event Grid. So that's a kind of a brief intro about Event Grid and its capability as a MQTT broker.
Is it fair to summarize that saying that it's a big event sync that any service, anything can connect to Azure or running on Azure can drop events, and that other services will be able to consume by subscribing, right? It's kind of a pub sub system, right?
Absolutely, yep.
But in a nutshell, that pub-sub system in Azure is something people in our crowd here is familiar with pub-sub because of MQTT used locally at the edge and used as well for connecting to the cloud. But here we're extending the story to having a sync that allows for different protocols and so forth, right? What kind of IoT scenarios do you see Event Grid in general? We'll talk about the MQTT broker in a second, but IoT solutions in general, what are the kind of scenarios you think could benefit from Event Grid when implementing IoT solution?
So this is a really good question. So if you look at any space today in IoT, starting from say healthcare, connected products like connected cars, factory, manufacturing, even precision agriculture, all this kind of industries today kind of look for connected data. They want to know what's happening under their ecosystem. How can we get to that what we call shop floor to top floor model? Like how do we get this information? How do we make the whole ecosystem more productive, more connected to make the decision making fast? So all those scenarios would emit information from devices, whether it's an edge or it is a deployed on a factory floor or anything. They would need this information back to cloud to take some actions on it, and they need some broker based service. That's where we see this highly being used across industries, mostly the connected products industry, from automobiles, manufacturing, healthcare, even IT services. apart from the OT sectors, what you're talking about is a very good use case for leveraging Azure Event Grid MQTT Broker.
Yeah, so you mentioned pretty much like any IoT solution here in terms of the scenarios that are supported, and I appreciate that. The one thing I've noticed myself is that it allows to simplify the different ways of communicating between the different entities, because IoT solution is not just about devices communicating with the cloud. It could be different types of sources of data, right? Could be the ERP, CRM that the company is using, and the OT side of things, the operations need to fit into a global database, something that reunites or gathers data from everything. And it seems like EventGrid is a good way of, orchestrating all these data pipelines, right?
Definitely, yes. That definitely, and it doesn't have to get limited with any sizes of the clients or devices or industry. It is viable to be adopted across multi-tier platforms, single-tier platforms, event-driven architecture, wherever it kind of is being the customer wants to put this to play. This is kind of going to flex across those things.
Okay, let's focus on this particular feature in EventGrid, which is the MQTT Broker, right? So it's a feature that came in like recently. It's not too old, but it's already in GA. It's something that is used already. Tell me a little bit about the reasons why you brought in MQTT Broker, because like there is an IoT Hub service already on Azure. What motivated the team to add that MQTT Broker in EventGrid?
That's a pretty good question. So, Azure IoT Hub today is having a limited capabilities of MQTT broker, but it's not a full-fledged MQTT broker. And as part of our vision, we are kind of like promoting a new scale broker service, which is Azure Event Grid MQTT Broker, which is going to be the next generation broker for connecting all the connected platform and product scenarios. So that is the main reason we are drifting and requesting all the customers today to kind of onboard to this new MQTT broker service. We GA'd about 6 to 7 months back, and this product is publicly available and it's a GA based product which supports more capabilities than our existing Azure services, starting with say support for 3.1 MQTT 3.1 and v5 supports, giving you the flexibility to do a multiple pub sub messaging models in terms of like one to one many device, one to many devices, many to many devices, one to one devices, whatever it is. Say it's a MQTT clients or any sources. We support multiple device communication patterns. Along with that, we do have this flexible authentication and find an access model, which is a core for any industry where they want to route the services or send the message to across any Azure flexible services. So all these are kind of like some features that customers have been asking for, and they have been like waiting for us to adopt. And Microsoft has released this out as our first party service where customers can start using this wildcard topics, capabilities of Hub and Sub, access control models, everything from natively from Azure Event Grid. So that is a plus point about this whole service. Plus, we do offer the best of the industry's 509 certificate authorization. We do support Entra ID and JOT token based authentication models, which is one of the flexible things that industries has been adopting to. So these are some of the features, and there's a long list of features as we talk about. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the reason.
Yeah, I can see. And actually, my next question, you have answered that, but I will still ask it because you might want to add some elements here. There are different existing open source MQTT brokers out there, right? You can pick and deploy. You can deploy them locally on server. You can deploy them in the cloud, right, in a VM. What is the advantage of picking the MQTT broker in EventGrid rather than deploying your own one, where you would eventually have final control over all the knobs around the broker itself, right?
That's a very good point. Now, it all depends on the end-to-end use case of customers, starting with what use case are they trying to fulfill and what kind of security models or scale and what kind of end use subscription points they have. Now, for any open source broker, yes, as you said, they can pick it up, deploy it, but the call when the call comes to scaling across many Azure services or non-Azure services security model, we offer the best reliable and kind of the most robust model in the industry today. So that is the part where how how customers feel comfortable about leveraging open source versus some established product backed with a SLA, SLO, and security things. And talking about, since we are marching towards a kind of era where security is quite high important, the authentication and authorization models, everybody want a kind of strict envelope around those devices, clients, and everything. That's where Microsoft stands first, where we are trying to offer you the gold standard of X509, the Azure Entra ID authentication, the JOT-based authentication for customers where they are not in Azure registry today. They want to use Okta, open source, any of those ODP models, they can leverage that. And also, the best part is you can talk to any number of services, downstream services within Azure that is basically compatible with Azure MQTT Broker. So that is the good thing.
Yep. And actually, not just the MQTT broker, because the event grid itself, once you have sent your messages to the MQTT broker, you can consume these messages through the different ways event grid exposes these events, right?
Yep, exactly. So we have almost close to 20 different services in Azure where you can send these devices. Basically, we call first party integration, where you can send this to a service bus or an event hub or a logic app or Azure function. You can send events, whatever you captured through our MQTT broker, to any of those event subscriptions today, which gives you
Yeah.
flexibility to just not just send an MQTT based data, but also transmit that to your required number of clients based on whatever end service you're using.
Well, Seth, before we jump into a demo, I have a last question for you. And I understand you might not be able to answer because there's lots of work in progress that we're not allowed to share today. But still, I think it'd be interesting for the IoT developers who are using MQTT to communicate with the Azure IoT Hub. They're very often using the device provisioning service to get credentials, X509 certs, and so on to the devices to be safely and securely connected to the IoT Hub service. And you just mentioned that, one of the big advantages of EventGrid is you can rely in terms of authentication on Entra ID and very robust mechanisms. So there's a piece missing though, which is, when you want to do zero touch provisioning of an IoT device, the device provisioning service is really interesting. So should we expect in the near future to have an evolution of the device provisioning service that Azure maintains in order to have devices being able to be provisioned for connecting to the MQTT broker in terms of certs, right?
Yeah, that's a good question, and this has been one of the asks from a lot of our customers to have support a seamless, a one touch, or a kind of a provisioning, a bulk support provisioning for all their devices or any other clients. Yes, we are working towards that, and we are currently having few programs which is currently in progress right now, which is currently being private previewed, and we are testing those things. But yes, we do hear that part of device management where customers want to bulk on board, and we are trying to kind of get to that part. But we also are trying to kind of like in parallel support a huge device management kind of scenario using custom domains where customers can onboard devices under a single custom domain name, and that is one of the features which will help them to manage their MQTT brokers and subscriptions at the scale for a geo federated scenario or for a geo client mobility model.
Great, great. And well, thanks you for that, because that's one of the questions that I'm getting as well a lot when I'm talking about MQTT Broker and EventGrid. It's just like, hey, provisioning. And the answer is it's coming. Be patient. That's something that is top of mind for the team. So well, when I ask you, when we're preparing for this IT show episode, I ask you, hey, what can we do as a demo, right? And we thought about a few things, and then I ended up telling you, just show me what you're excited about, right? So how about you show us what you're excited about when it comes to EventGrid MQTT Broker?
Yes, so the best part or one of the coolest part of the features, we are trying to be MQTT compliant with the industry, and we are almost there with all the features that we have today. But the recent release of our custom domains feature, which is one of the features that is used for managing bulk resources in terms of the namespaces, or what we call event broker, is one of the hot features that we have launched recently. And this is currently in public preview, and it's mainly being used across customers who have large kind of a device based footprint in industry, and they want to manage all those devices today under a single domain name, what we call it as custom domain name. So this kind of helps you to assign your own domain names for MQTT brokers, which are like
Mhm.
tied to MQTT or HTTP endpoints, basically enhancing the security and simplifying the client configuration. So a customer can have a large number of devices associated to a single domain name, which could be a cars.com or something like that, and they could not they can manage all the devices under a single domain name by using a suitable domain registry that they purchase, and have a DNS configuration done to that, and bake it with the TLS configuration or SSL configuration they are looking at. So today I want to show a demo on that, and probably kind of walk you through a simple use case where it kind of how it is done today in the industry.
Perfect. Let's do that.
In this demo, I'll showcase how you can use the custom domain name support in the EventGrid namespace. Custom domains allow you to assign your own domain names to the MQTT and HTTP endpoints of your EventGrid namespace. You can use the support along with a routing service like Azure Traffic Manager to implement customer-managed GeoDR or handle clients that move across regions. In my demo, I'll use this configuration to dynamically migrate my client mobile device from a namespace in Central US to an identical namespace in East US. Each of the namespaces will have a subscriber attached to them that will act as a message viewer to show the traffic get routed from one namespace to another. Let's start with my custom domain that I created using App Service Domains. I created here a subdomain that is pointing to my Azure Traffic Manager endpoint. The Azure Traffic Manager is routing traffic to one of my namespaces here based on priority. With this configuration, all my requests should be going to the Central US namespace. The Central US namespace here has a custom domain configuration assigning the same domain to the MQTT endpoint. Here, of course, we also have a reference to the server certificate so the TLS handshake can succeed. The East US namespace also has an identical custom domain configuration. Now, let's take a look at the data flow in action. My mobile device here is connecting using the custom domain, which should be pointed to my Central US namespace. If I start sending here sample payloads, you'll see that they all make it to the Central US subscriber over here. If I go back to my Azure Traffic Manager to disable the Central US namespace endpoint, I can simulate the namespace being unavailable. Now, if I go back to my mobile device to reconnect, all the new requests should now be going to the East US namespace. And if I send traffic, you should be able to see it now in the East US subscriber. As you can see, we're able to seamlessly migrate my device across namespaces without needing to change its configuration using custom domains and a routing service like Azure Traffic Manager.
Nice. No, I like that. Actually, it's interesting because it definitely talks to one of the main reasons why you would want to not manage your own MQTT broker, right? Because here you benefit from event grid, capabilities for your MQTT broker to be seamless for devices. You say like no change on a device, and now you could eventually think of multi-tenant solution. I'm starting to think about the applications for this solution, multi-tenant solution or a roaming device. You want to optimize the communication with the closest data center because that device is roaming. You don't need to change its configuration or the code down there. I like that. That's a great demo, actually.
Thank you, Olivier. And that is the coolest part of having this custom domain feature. It's going to be GA pretty soon, but it's in public preview, and we encourage kind of customers to do it. We do have a lot of customers adopting this and trying it out for their scale scenarios and cross mobility, and it works tremendously today. So happy to
Yeah.
have this feature.
That's great. So that before we go into information for the users on how to get started and so on, I have a couple more questions for you. The first one is on the device side of thing. Do you need anything special besides an MQTT client? Right? There's plenty out there for like they're fine tuned for embedded device and so on. are you guys proposing an SDK or a client, or is it something that you're just saying, hey, it's going to be whatever is out there and we're good there?
So any MQTT client today, we today have examples and code samples using Paho, where we kind of show them how a device can connect and can be done. But the devices with constrained capacity, they can use Nano EMX SDKs too, which is compatible with Azure services based on the use case of the devices. So yeah, we are open mostly with Paho and Nano EMX, so we can use all those things. But again, we are not restricting particular any particular SDKs as of now, but anything that works with Azure services should be good enough.
Awesome. And one of the things that some people might react to here is that in the past, when using MQTT to connect to the Azure IoT Hub service, you needed to use specific topics, and it was harder to do that on your own rather than use the Microsoft SDK for devices. But in that case, because it's MQTT compatible or it's respecting the standard, you can just use any client.
Yeah.
Which leads to my question. There are actually some limitations. There's a documentation page that says, hey, here's where we're at regarding our compliance to the MQTT standard with the 3105. And in there are some elements, I'm not going to go into details. I don't recall what they are. They were really like kind of corner cases. I'm wondering, are you aiming at becoming 100%, compatible, or did you realize that, hey, there are like 99.9% of the customers were using all the rest and don't need that? So where are we at in terms of actual compatibility with the MQTT standard?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. So we are trying to be the robust, reliable service with respect to the MQTT compliance, and we do know like there is a couple of features, like one or two features which we are trying to like kind of catch up with. And yes, there are features like retain flags and custom authentications. We are working towards it, just making sure customers can leverage those use cases and they can do it. But today, as of now, all the customers who have been asking for with respect to their requirements with MQTT compliance, we were surfacing that based on the priority. Now the retain flag and the custom authentication is something that we are working towards that. But yes, we are strongly kind of marching towards that. Our goal is to make it 100% compliant and kind of meet with customers priorities based on that. Yes.
Yeah. We'll get there altogether. As you were saying, if customers want to use it and are facing some issues like limitations, they should reach out to you, to the team, and file a support ticket and this kind of things to help you guys identify, the priorities there. So really, I've been on your side, right? So I appreciate how things are working. So I would definitely invite people who are starting to play with it to bring up what they think is, hey, like this is kind of a showstopper for us. So yeah, great. So that's last thing. Someone wants to try it. Is there a free tier? You said samples. There's some samples out there. Any particular thing you recommend people, especially IoT developer, to go try today?
Yeah, today we have in our learning portal or in our public portal today, we have sample codes that it's connected to the GitHub where people can go look into the sample codes and try it out. Apart from that, we have tutorials as well as how-to sections and references out in a public document where people can try MQTT Broker, the namespaces, how does it work, the capability, each and new capabilities, what we have across that. So we have sample codes and tutorials which customers or developers can go keep trying out. And obviously, like, we are always open and friendly towards any question that we ask. We have an alias where the people kind of constantly post questions, and we also kind of have GitHub forums where we keep answering the questions. So we encourage more and more people to try it or give a feedback on it. To answer your question, do we have a free tier? Today we have a kind of a pricing model where we support up to 100,000, more than 100,000 K operations for the first tier, which is operation, which is free. And the tier based model is, and the TO based model is pretty cheaper today. It's only 4 cents per hour per device. So we definitely encourage customers to try it out, and our developers to try it out and give us a feedback on that. But that's how it is. And we have the details on our pricing page today.
Yeah, and same thing for the pricing as for features. I'm actually curious to hear from customers. You're getting an MQTT Broker as a service with all the shebang and functionality for authentication, for routing, for connecting with different types of services on different types of protocols. So you're basically getting an MQTT Broker on steroids here. So is it expensive or is it not? That's the question to our audience. Let's see what they say, right? Comment down there, reach out to us, let us know what you think.
Sure, definitely.
Great. Well, Seth, once again, thank you for your time today. I'm sure you'll be back because people will have questions. I'm sure you will answer questions on the comments here on YouTube and other social media. But you'll come back with more features for the MQTT Worker and more IoT scenarios, I'm sure, right?
Definitely stay tuned. We are constantly working towards get a kind of like making the best enterprise broker as first party broker from Microsoft, and also like we are trying to be the compete in the industry by kind of satisfying all the needs of the customers. So yeah, stay tuned to our Ask Even Grid channel, so you'll be able to see the latest and greatest features of MQTT being fulfilled as we kind of march towards the last event. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, have a great day. Thanks again for your time today. And everyone, thanks for watching.
Thank you for having us, Oli.